So we are very happy to be here in the podcast of SecT, presenting our first talk in a wonderful interview, followed by Peter.
I'm Peter. And Rickard from Säkerhetspodcasten. And we're happy to be here with you guys from Tal and
Eran.
Eran. Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Why can't I remember that? It's awful.
Oh, that's fantastic.
No, really nice to talk to you today. And thank you for a good talk. It was a really nice start for the conference. I think we heard you talk about finding vulnerabilities in kernel and looking at closed source and open source and some of the methodologies behind that. Could you elaborate a little bit about what took you into vulnerability research and specifically perhaps the kernel?
Okay, so great. Thank you for having us, and we are very happy to do our talk and present our research, and of course to be done with it. That's good. So we are mostly focused on the discovery of 0 days, and both of us like low level and the kernel itself. And in the past we did a lot of closed source research towards the Windows kernel, and now it's time for the Linux kernel, which I'll specialize and will expand.
Yes, so I originally came indeed. I did many types of jobs, but I did for a long time a low-level Linux development. So very internals development and maybe focusing on security perspectives. And not a long time ago, I discovered all the topic of vulnerability research. And I think because I like the security topic, it's really nice to know, like to finding vulnerabilities. It's like going around for the development side. And yeah, that's basically it.
So for him, it was very natural because he has a very strong background at kernel development, also kernel module development. And for me, it was very easy because I started as a malware developer mostly, and then went immediately to vulnerability research. So it was a very good match. We also share an office. I hear his terrible music. He hears my fantastic music.
Sounds like a good day at the office, though.
I hear Swedish music, so it's okay.
Yeah, you were talking about some of the methodology that goes behind finding these vulnerabilities, and you were touching on the subject of fuzzers, but you didn't sort of weave that into the talk. You were talking about dumb fuzzers and then intelligent or AI-driven or somewhat intelligent fuzzers or advanced fuzzers. When would you sort of apply the one or the other?
You want to take this?
It's maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so previously, last year, we presented our talk on fuzzing Windows drivers via using a KFL. KFL is a very advanced fuzzer and complicated to set it up. Actually, just the mere usage of it, like to set it up, took us around 2 months or so. And we did not have enough time for that now. And also we had the source code. So it was a lot easier to understand what goes behind of the things. Also, as you will...
Yes, and if I may add, yes, it basically we didn't have to use the fuzzers because it took us very short time to find the vulnerabilities, and only from looking at the source code and as we explained, like we have a couple of methodologies to do it. And here in this project, we use the type of that we check the things first. We checked all the vulnerable we can say functions that we have, and we found very easily the vulnerabilities. So we just didn't have to use advanced fuzzers.
Yeah. So a dumb fuzzer suits us great because let's examine a software. It's like a tree of a code path. So if you have a direct line, it's very easy to use something that is sequential, like a dumb fuzzer. Then in the cases that you need to spread out like a tree, then a full-blown fuzzer, it's more useful.
Cool. Yeah, because I remember if I can take us back to last year, you were talking about automating, fuzzing of kernel drivers and all the hassle you had to go through that. That of course does not apply when you have the source code. It's a totally different ballgame.
Sometimes you need it, but in this case, you really didn't.
Yeah, cool. No, so it was a sort of a spectacular, thing about looking at these peripherals that I guess mostly gamers like to add to their computers. And I was, what really cracked me up, because I was like, I recognized your face, and when they asked you, do you want to use the clicker? And I was like, he's not going to let anyone plug in a USB drive in his computer.
And we exactly showed the reason why you shouldn't plug in.
So that was a perfect call.
So I was like, that was funny.
Yes.
No. So anyway, but how can we, as sort of blue teamers, use the types of things that you guys do?
That's an excellent question, actually.
Yeah.
So the obvious thing is to update whatever is possible.
Yeah.
That's very ordinary. And also, Tal mentioned that Razer is one of the most popular vendors out there. Still, it seems that it's not enough.
But I mean, you have to look at it from their side. I mean, they're all about shiny lights and rainbow colors and all that.
Of course. So update whatever you can.
Yeah.
And in this case, there is the classic mismatch of security and new features and shiny and brighty features. Now it's okay. The bugs were patched completely, and in a very good way. The communication was fantastic with them, right?
Again, I have to mention again that Open Razer is indeed an open source project, and it's not behind the Razer company. It's like an open source project with a lot of maintainers. Yes, and after again finding the vulnerabilities, the communication with the main maintainers was very good, and I've sent in an email regarding the vulnerabilities, and we really fixed it very, very quickly.
But we can give a shout out to our team member Omer Safati, which found it's almost similar type of bug on Windows, the Windows driver, which is the official driver of Razer, that allowed him to run code in the kernel directly from low privileged user.
Yes.
So it seems in some cases the code quality is a bit lacking in those peripheral devices.
So what's the solution? Is it a monolithic kernel?
Maybe yes.
I want to say something, okay? And people will laugh at me because I'm a hater of this operating system. Mac is a lot safer, and you cannot have drivers, kernel drivers in the Mac kernel, for instance. So it reduces the attack surface substantially.
Yeah.
Also, there is a small difference that in Windows you have your driver to be digitally signed, and in Linux you do not. As a result,
it depends.
In most cases, come on.
Yes.
So as a result, in most cases, the code quality is a bit lower in the Linux side than in the Windows. But there will be always bugs, and we want them to be fixed as soon as possible and to raise the awareness. And I think people with enough good knowledge of internals and some exploitation could also find similar types of bugs as well.
Yeah.
So one very common argument is, open source versus closed source. There's all of these different wars and so. So you have some experience, that's one set of data points, where you found much vulnerabilities versus low vulnerabilities. Can you measure this in some way? Can you prove or have some, not prove, but have some sort of model for knowing that you think the closed source version has fewer bugs, right? But do we know that, or is it just harder to find them because they are closed source?
So in my opinion, it's it's my opinion from what I've experienced, that in open source, again, from my experience, there's less vulnerabilities than in closed source. But again, it doesn't really mean it depends on what you're searching and whose company developed it.
Yep.
But in general, again, only because it's open source and everyone can check it out and read the code and commit code into it. So from what I've seen in open source, there's less vulnerabilities, but again, there's always vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
I would like to say that I think that in the popular projects in open source, there are a lot of people looking at it. So even in the before release version,
automatic things that checks.
People check it a lot and they communicate pretty well. On closed source, however, it's not usually the case. Now, once you have the product, you have the binary of an open source versus a closed source, I think then closed source becomes a lot more tricky because You like the source code, of course, and so on and so on. And also some companies, without saying names of apples, want to obfuscate their code and make things a lot harder. It doesn't mean the bugs are not there. It is a bit more complex to find them, but I think, in my point of view, that they should allow security researchers and developers to understand the code base as best to eliminate and find more bugs.
Yes, and I just will add something to it, that even companies with closed source project, even if we say that you guys have vulnerabilities in your drivers, for example, say, no, we don't have vulnerabilities. And then they want make it clear that they do have security problems.
That's a great thing. Some vendors like the security policy, the security disclosure process. We can say that we have been in communication more than 24 different vendors. And there is a discrepancy between the way vendors treat your findings, even if they're fully proven with a POC.
Yes, some vendors are very happy that you communicate with the DM and very acting fast, and some will just don't reply to you and say, no, we don't have vulnerabilities, and just go away.
Yeah, but I think that is a universal problem. It doesn't matter if it's closed source or open. Well, open source might be different because anyone can go there and look at the code.
I think in open source the community is better than in closed source.
But when it comes to different companies, I think you're going to find as many responses to a responsible disclosure as you're going to find companies, because they are handling things very differently at different companies.
I agree.
Cool. So what talks are you looking forward to now? You've got your thing all done.
I have my answer for it. So I'm really I worked a lot with eBPF for Linux, and I know it quite well, the internals of it and everything about it. And I saw that there is a talk about eBPF in the Windows, and I really looking forward to it.
Richard Johnson, that I took some inspiration because he's an expert of fuzzing, so it will be pretty interesting. Also the Popo Pizza, because Edwin is a great presenter, and also the Tesla Bluetooth. You saw it at Recon, but I haven't seen it. So
looking forward to it. Great talks.
Yes. Anyway, thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, guys.
Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much. You too.
Thank you so much.